massive Google scheme.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Seculo. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Seculo.
All right, folks, welcome to Seculo. So if you are on Google, you're looking around, maybe you're looking about inflation, for instance, you might see an ad on Google, and in the small print, you'd have to maybe have your glasses on. It's already getting a little blurry for me, and I'm just reading it down there. But in the very big print, you'll see it's Reuters.com, so it looks like a real headline. And it says, the headline, which is even in bigger font, inflation is down, lower cost, and higher wages. And then in the smaller print, like, under the Biden-Harris administration, quote, the U.S. is winning the inflation fight. Kamala Harris vows to combat, and then ... And then you can click it, goes to Reuters, and guess what? That is not the headline at Reuters. They don't even think most people will click it. But let me tell you just how much money they're spending on ads like this, which, by the way, is the administration that wanted to silence and did silence so many conservatives because of what they labeled as dis, or malinformation. Remember, they had the disinformation czar. She did not go anywhere, and they took that down. But then when we FOIA'd, it says it's still being done, and Congress asked, is it still being done? They said, well, yeah, to some extent, yes. They would go to social media companies and tell them what to take down. The most famous is the Hunter Biden laptop and the fact that the New York Post, which I think has the second largest circulation in the United States, it was banned from Twitter. This was before the Musk purchase, because of running an article about the Hunter Biden laptop, which, of course, we all know now is the Hunter Biden laptop is legit, and it was real information. So because of laws, though, this administration uses those. And, Logan, I mean, this kind of advertising, listen, it happens in a lot of, like, if you're buying shoes or clothing, jewelry, whatever, you're Googling things like that, presents for someone. But this one, how about VP Harris's economic vision, lower costs and higher wages? I mean, we haven't seen that at all during the Biden administration. It's been the wages have been stagnant, and the cost are continuing. Inflation is continuing to plague America.
It's the definition of what should be fake news. They are legitimately creating headlines that do not exist, running them as ads, with the hyperlink taking you to legitimate, we'll put those in quotes, legitimate news sources. The AP, Time, Reuters, all of these, by the way, funded by the Harris campaign. The Harris campaign not driving you all the time. Some of them they are, but not all the time, back to their website. They're sending you to positive articles. Again, guess what? Then they're paying to get those seen more, and then those will rise up, and then that news source will go, oh, we're going to write more articles like that. It's a web that's going on, but mainly it's that the headlines don't even match. The headlines don't match at all. These are, what they'll say, they're not headlines. They'll say these are ad copy. It's made to be misleading.
I mean, the worst of worst, put it back up, is the first one on our list. Border crossings at a new low. Trump blocks border security. Biden and Harris negotiated a bipartisan border deal. Trump killed it for political gain. Except for Trump cannot vote in the House or the Senate, nor can he veto anything. It was conservatives that had issues that this did not go far enough, and it did not give enough to Republicans that they wanted, and so it did not move through. And the question was it going to actually do what it said it was going to do? And that says it's from time.com. Now, it doesn't hide at the very top. It does say it's paid for by the Harris for presidential campaign, but that's the smallest text you'll see in all of these ads. So why are they allowed to put up their disinformation and their misinformation, but we have to think twice before posting anything because we'll get shut down, won't be able to get emails out, won't be able to fundraise, won't be able to get our message out, effectively get canceled or shut down, like we have seen from really big entities like the New York Post. So, again, some questions to you today. One big question. Are you buying the media narrative that President Trump's campaign is spiraling? I mean, the DNC is next week. I want to hear from you on it, 1-800-684-3110, and get your honest opinions at 1-800-684-3110. We know this is a time, folks, where we need resources to ACLJ to combat this mis and dis and malinformation that's being posed to you or going after pro-life pregnancy centers. Go to aclj.org. Donate today.
According to Axios, the Harris campaign has been caught red-handed rewriting news headlines, giving them a pro-Kamala spin, and then posting the phony results within Google's search ads.
So when you Google, the fake stuff comes up instead of the actual headlines. However, these search results were purchased by the Harris campaign. So you got to look for the little sticker that says sponsored.
A source familiar with the Harris team is defending the practice, saying that they are simply giving voters, quote, more context.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump had done this with his campaign? Could you imagine if there was even one slight purchase of an ad with a then rewriting of the headline, the uproar that we would be subjected to? And here, you're right. Not only do they know they can get away with it with the media, but they know that they can get away with it with the liberal voters. And that is the saddest part.
These are fake headlines, falsely attributed to news outlets, but it was intentional. So therefore, it's deliberate disinformation. And this is, of course, coming from a candidate and a political party that's demanded censorship of their political opponents.
This is manipulation of the American mind. Most of the headlines already favor her. Time magazine just put her on the cover, and the most important piece of the entire cover story about Kamala Harris, quote, her movement, the redefining Kamala Harris is, quote, the Kamala Harris campaign refused to make her available for an interview. She's not participating in glowing profiles about her. So this was the next stage in that repertoire.
You want to be a trusted brand? All 12 of these outlets should come together in outrage and issue a joint statement saying this is unhealthy for democracy, it's unhealthy for journalism, it's unhealthy for the media. Anything short of that is complicity in Kamala Harris's attempt to deceive America.
I think the dynamic here is, on the one hand, they spread misinformation, disinformation. On the other hand, they demand censorship. And that's what we should keep our eyes out for. They want to have complete control over the information that we receive.
And welcome back to Seculo. So you've got the mis, the dis, the malinformation. Where is it coming from? The Harris campaign. And I mean, again, we play, I think the worst one still, and let me just say it again. I'm sure they are spending, by the way, in the 25 days since Joe Biden has stepped aside, so maybe 24 days since Harris was, put forward as the likely nominee, and then she secured the nomination even before the convention next week. In 25 days, they have spent $941,000 just with Google on these ads running. Now, you're not going to see them everywhere you are. You're going to see them if you're in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. So, again, some of the most key battleground states in the country. That's no surprise there for any kind of advertising. What is a surprise is the amount of money. And, Logan, I kind of want you to explain that to people. You put $941,000 behind Google ads in 20-ish days in only, 7 states, so a few of which are very small states. Yeah. That's a lot of people seeing it.
Tens of millions of impressions. We probably could come up with a number, exact number, something close to it. But depending on how targeted it is, you could reach tens of millions of people, if not more, with $1 million in ad spend. We obviously get involved in ad spending here. We do that for our campaigns and for the ACLJ, so we know how that works. And that is a lot of money, especially to be spending in very specific markets. You're not blanketing the United States. You're highly targeting these, and these are incredibly misleading. I think probably the worst of the worst that I've seen, because it is that idea of creating, because it does lead you to a real article. It is a fake headline that they have created out of thin air that then sends you to a real article. And understand what they are doing. They are funding essentially these news outlets. The news outlets then are getting a ton of traffic, which then gets advertiser revenue, and they realize, more ad revenue is coming in on Harris campaign articles that are more positive, so let's create more positive articles. But those articles are being pushed from the campaign with a fake headline, and a fake headline, like you said, that isn't based in some kind of reality. It's, the inflation is down. It's border crossing at a new low. Trump blocks border security. These are just falsehoods that they hope people click on it. And it goes even... They're clearly trying to combat certain things with a lot of Tim Walz's military service, those type of ones.
Harris picks Tim Walz. 215,000 Minnesota families win. Doesn't explain about why. It was a tax credit somehow under his program, which, by the way, is so common by governors on both sides of the aisle. But it's just using that headline like 215,000 Minnesota families win by Harris's decision.
But if you wonder why
Walz?
These news sources are historically liberal-leaning, they're legitimately paying the Democrat campaign right now for president is paying for traffic to be sent to PBS to NPR, to Rolling Stone, to The Independent, to Time Magazine, to AP News. They are advertising for these while being misleading to the actual customer. So this is, to me, it's completely unethical.
Yeah.
Of all sort of ads I've seen, these are the worst.
How about this one? Very basic. Harris will lower health care cost. How? We haven't heard a policy plan from her yet. How?
Well, you're supposed to click on it and read that, then.
But that's on NPR.org.
Yeah.
And all it says on the little print, which I still don't think is from the article, Kamala Harris will lower the cost of high-quality, affordable health care.
No, all of that is created ad copy.
Yeah.
Created ad copy. The only thing that's taking you to is to an actual link to an article, but that article is not related. It could be related.
They talk about how she supports Medicare for all, which, by the way, she's trying to back away from now.
But the way they make you feel that is that's coming from the editorials, the editor or the writer's point of view.
Right.
And it's not. It's the campaign.
Right. There's some truth behind all of this.
Yeah. What they're saying is like, oh, this is a headline for an article and a byline, or whoever the byline is.
Maybe not even an editorial, just an article reporting the news.
Yeah, exactly.
So again,
and it says, little paid for by the Harris campaign.
Yeah, which isn't that uncommon for campaigns. It's just they're getting noticed because even Axios is writing about how they are rewriting the news headlines. Now, again, they know that most Americans, we know it here from many of you. A lot of people will go on social media and share something that we share, and they will not click on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
oh yeah, we'll have
they may have read it in a different time, or maybe saw it in an email and say, okay, I don't need to read that again. I know about it. I heard the show, but
we can track. We can see like an X post that goes, would say viral, gets like hundreds of thousands of retweets,
right,
or reposts. I'm sorry, it's old nomenclature. Repost. And then we'll see, that it doesn't generate the people who posted it never even clicked on the website. That's not uncommon.
No. Again, I'll take your call, say 1-800-684-3110. And it kind of plays into that. I think we go to Justin's call in California on line 1. Hey, Justin, welcome to Secular.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I think the assertion that Trump's campaign is spiraling is absolutely ridiculous. And I think the media are trying to convince people that he's somehow lost control of his campaign, which I don't see at all. But anyway, my question is this. I know Trump's ambitious, but I think all he needs to talk about really is the border, the economy, and foreign policy. And if he sticks with those three things in any particular order, he has 80 days to convince, the independent voters and other voters, to vote for him and to expand his lead. And I don't think he should waste a nanosecond insulting Kamala's intellect or race.
Yeah, I think those kind of things are how it's giving the Harris campaign ways to fundraise and also mainstream media ways to attack. He might have a campaign shakeup because he's now dealing with a different campaign, because she's a very different candidate than who they were preparing for, which was Joe Biden. She was just a minor role, and again, so I think that, and even J.D. Vance is in a role where he's having to, on the road, kind of retool everything that they were preparing for. I think what we'll see is post-Democrat convention, there'll be a bump or whatever. But remember the post-Republican convention, Democrats were like, oh my gosh, the Republicans are coming out. This is like they are so pumped up. I don't see how we can win this time. I mean, it just feels that you get a feeling that way. We'll see if that happens next week. It also looks like the protests are going to be out of control next week. I mean, we're already seeing at a Harris event after the event was taken over by, of course, the pro-Hamas.
Yeah, we saw that happen. It was interesting. The caller brought up an interesting point, which is, a lot of people say that, and I say it too. But it's also not President Trump's way.
No.
So it's probably not going to happen. So maybe a pipe dream for you. So there may be some part of us that just needs to go, okay, you know what? If you're a Trump supporter, you understand part of it is that you're going to get this kind of rhetoric.
You're going to get the focus that you like on the economy.
Here's what's interesting to me, though.
At the border.
This ad campaign, the Harris campaign is running, is specifically about those issues.
Yep.
This is their response, because they're not going to do pressers. They're not going to do all these interviews. We know that. The response is to create fake headlines, because what they do know is that is the vulnerable spot. The vulnerable spot for the Harris campaign is the current situation in our country. So you run ads that are talking about inflation being down and the border and how she's going to change everything, and how, again, creating those fake news narratives. because, and legitimately creating these news narratives. That is the response that they're having right now to, if Donald Trump was to stick to the issues, they are clearly most scared of the issues. They're not scared of the rhetoric, because the rhetoric may not play into helping anyone. But they know that if he does start hitting on inflation, does start hitting on the border crossings, that is the vulnerable spot. So you come up with these headlines. And one of our team members just put, there's a lot of factors that could go into it, but roughly a $950,000 ad spend is about 95 million impressions. Okay. So 95 million impressions spent over just a handful of states.
Right.
So,
the states that matter the most.
And very targeted.
I mean, this headline, the truth about Walz's service, and it doesn't say more about him. It just says, J.D. Vance lies about Tim Walz. Yeah. I mean, so you're calling your VP opponent a liar. I just think, again, there should be a retooling by the Trump campaign. We've all said that there has to be, because they're up against a very different candidates now for president, Harris and Walz. So, of course, you're going to have to take a little time to fine-tune what works and what doesn't. He's going to go out, like the caller said, I don't really love that he says this or that, but he's going to test things the next couple of weeks to see what is working, and then you go full steam with that message. I do think the full steam message is the border, the economy, inflation, and what you got going on in, of course, Russia, Ukraine, and, of course, Israel and the Middle East and Iran. So if you look at those issues, and he's always going to talk about those issues, by the way, Logan. He's always going to speak to those issues. But you're still going to get Donald Trump. First of all, he's back on Twitter now.
It's not changing. It's not changing. But remember, they're the ones that call you clowns, and they're the ones who are posting this. So, You know what? They asked if we do it early. I haven't done it in a while. Let's send in those clowns. If you're watching on YouTube or on Rumble, send in the clowns. Put the clown emoji in those comments. It always helps us out and always shows that you are with us. But we also need to talk about, as we wrap up, the ACLJ work.
Yeah, we're seeing mass deception through the media, whether it's Kamala's distorted use of Google ads or the state of Mass funding a massive state-sponsored media blitz, spreading lies about pro-life sinners. At the same time, a Massachusetts town, we haven't gotten to this yet,
coming up,
is banning a church from using public library space. But the ACLJ is fighting back. We're going to file lawsuits against the government and abortion industry as soon as Monday. We're going to fight for, of course, this counter campaign in Massachusetts against the pro-life pregnancy centers. And we've already got the demand letter out to Massachusetts town banning that church from accessing the library space, something we won at the Supreme Court, 30 years ago, the ACLJ. But these are massive cases that require immense resources. Donate today during our Life and Liberty Drive right now, aclj.org. We need your financial support, aclj.org. Kamala Harris has been the, of course, presidential nominee. It'll become official next week in Chicago at the Democrat National Convention, but the delegates have already voted, so much of that will just be for show because they did a virtual nomination. She's got her VP nominee in Walz, and yet, even though she's done some campaign events, and they did a big campaign blitz when they announced Walz, it's interesting that today, tomorrow, and Thursday, she has no events on her calendar for the campaign, and you've got CNN of all places. So it's not just Fox News and conservative media pointing out that Harris is unwilling to do interviews. It's now CNN in interviews with two different campaign spokespeople, two different shows at two different times of the day on CNN yesterday, who are all pointing to, well, she had a busy schedule, and she's doing a policy speech Friday, which, by the way, is not a actual press conference where you take questions.
This goes into the whole narrative that many people have been concerned about with the way that she was then made the standard bearer of the party when President Biden decided to drop out of the race, is that she's never faced scrutiny. She faced a little bit of scrutiny in 2020 when she ran for president and she dropped out of the race before Iowa. So she never got votes. Right. Now she had got to skip the entire primary process where there's a lot of scrutiny on you, and is now avoiding more scrutiny as the nominee of the Democrat Party.
She is taking her message directly to the American people. She hit a number of battleground states. I think we had 15,000 people in Detroit last week, 12 to 13,000 in Nevada. She's been taking her message to the voters and drawing large crowds. So she's actually having those direct conversations.
But not today. All I'm saying is not today. She could do an interview today, I would think, because she's not out there today.
All right, welcome back to Secular. So if the end of that, you heard about that case in Massachusetts and the town banning a church from using public library space. And by the way, it gets worse than that. We're representing them. We're about to get into that for you and explain that to you. But I do want to take some calls that have come in at 1-800-684-3110. We're going to continue to talk politics. Rick Grenell is going to be joining us again today on the broadcast. I want to ask him those kind of questions too, because the media is pushing out this narrative now. We're even seeing it on conservative play like Drudge Report, which not always big fan of Trump, and likes to be, get people clicking, which is that like the Trump campaign is totally falling apart and Donald Trump is mad and angry. And I just think, we're a week before the DNC. He's not going to get a lot of attention other than being attacked next week. And it gives him then the time to hopefully fine-tune the message for the final push of the campaign, which you couldn't do 2 months ago because not just because you can't predict everything that's going to happen in the future, but because you literally now are dealing with two people on the ballot where only one of them was going to be on the ballot in a more minor role.
Yeah, and I think you also have a situation where the whole campaign had to move and shift so dramatically in the last 60 days, not 60 days, last 20 days.
4 days.
24 days had to change everything. So, when we talk about real issues that could come up later on, I mean, this
also
is
know
a concern.
Is that most voters, especially with the general election, have not been spending their summer following any of this.
Let's go ahead and take a phone call. Let's go to Michael in Florida on line 2. Listen on Sirius XM. Michael, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. We are experiencing the Biden administration, or should I say Harris administration, has now become the administration, the ploy is sleight of hand. And it's unfortunate because we as U.S. citizens, we're now dealing with the Democratic machine.
Yeah.
And a huge portion of that, the engine to that machine that really kind of makes it go is all of the media outlets, all forms.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think they were depressed. Depressed, and I mean in a real way. They were finding it hard to write positive articles about Biden as the next as running again, and finding it hard to defend the policies. And so they're actually trying to let Harris, like she's adopted the no taxes on tips things and stuff like that. She's going to start adopting some of these more moderate policies, just unique policies, really more, again, I'd say populist policies that President Trump has been more known for, even than just, most Republicans. But, again, the key time is from after the DNC, and we know there's going to be at least one presidential debate. And while usually I don't put a lot of weight behind these debates, this time around, okay, one debate led to Joe Biden dropping out of the race, and a debate last election cycle, I think, really hurt President Trump, and that was the first debate with Joe Biden when he was just kept cutting in, and it kind of turned people off.
Yeah.
And then, so this debate with Harris, which, again, she's going to get a little boost after the Democrat convention, that is going to be, I think, very important because that is at a time when people are starting to pay attention.
Yeah, you're a month or so out.
People are in school now. It's September. You're going to start
getting
paying
darker
attention.
earlier. That's what's happening.
When does that happen?
Like, when does the time change happen? It can start to get darker earlier, very soon. But time
the
change
actual-
happens.
that
That may be post-election. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe right after that. One of the things one of our producer, put up that there was a whole conversation about whether she plagiarized the taxing on the tips, no tax on tips.
Yeah.
And this was the article, if you want to know sort of some media response. They don't deny that, but the LA Times put, Trump says Harris stole his idea for exempting tips from taxes, but her version beats his. That's the headline.
Why?
Well, we'd have to click through and read.
You exempt.
Okay. She'll say raise the minimum wage, therefore it's more money.
Okay, but that's a different.
I also watched a whole piece of her where she was like, when I worked at McDonald's, it was when I was, a student and all these things, so I couldn't afford. But now people are, they can't have a livable wage. It's like, I think this is the conversation that most conservatives are having, which is those jobs were not made to be those career jobs. Understanding we're living in a poor economy time where those are having to be career jobs.
Well, you have to work too.
You need to be looking at that as the problem. So,
yes. Yeah,
right.
I do want to update people because we got to do legal action that we took very quickly. So the ACLJ has sent a demand letter after a local government in Massachusetts, surprise, surprise, back in Massachusetts again, blocked a church from using a public library's community meeting room, which is open to the public, and you can reserve the room when you'd like during library hours if no one else has reserved it, and no rules on how many times you can reserve it, like a week or a month. And so, and of course, the ACLJ, we step up to defend churches all the times because they get treated differently than every other entity by these government entities, especially when it comes to public spaces. So our client is a pastor. He requested the use of a community meeting room of his town's library. It was open and available to conduct Bible studies for his church and to hold gatherings for grief support. So again, at the public library. And the town policy for the meeting room said the meeting room is open for the public for informational, educational, cultural, and civic benefit. It also allows people to reserve the room for regular use, even having a monthly reservation. The library director initially told our client he could meet for the biweekly time he requested, but then Logan, he was kicked out and told that he could not have the space multiple times and in these studies, and so he has not received any confirmation on his ability to use the space, whether occasionally or for recurring events, because he got a follow-up email from the town's legal counsel. So the library says, okay, yeah, of course you can do that. If it's available, sign up. We want people to come into the library, right? It's public. The taxpayers pay for it. And then the legal counsel says, no, you can only do it for occasional events, but not recurring events like bi-monthly Bible studies. That directs their policy, and we are fighting back. He's also got a meeting that he does with 5 or 6 others from the church for a Bible study in an open area of a public park, and you only have to get a permit there if you're going to host like a big event, like you're going to use a gazebo, and you're doing this kind of like again, like open to the public event, or you're the kind of event I'm talking about. It's going to basically take over the park. Yeah, this is not. But he did run an ad saying if you'd like to join us for this Bible study in the park, you can. Out. And of course, then what was he told, Logan?
No, please delete that ad. We got to get rid of it. You can't even be there.
Right. So. The ACLJ is taking action. We've won a case very similar to this at the U.S. Supreme Court 30 years ago. It's called Lamb's Chapel. It says the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court explained that government violates the First Amendment when it denies access to a speaker solely to suppress the point of view he espouses on an otherwise includable subject. The court ruled in our favor, held that public schools' decision to exclude a church from using its meeting spaces when they were open to the public, just like this, to reserve if the times were available, because a group wanted to show a Christian film. And of course, the Supreme Court said that violates the First Amendment. And this is why, again, when we go to our Life and Liberty Drive, let me just walk through. Of course, we're working with our colleague Tulsi Gabbard on this, again, attack on her First Amendment and maybe more constitutional rights that has been going on through this Quiet Skies program and her husband. But we also have got, again, we're preparing to file lawsuits likely early next week against the Massachusetts government and the abortion industry that are smearing those pro-life pregnancy centers. We also are going to not just file a lawsuit, Logan, but also launch a huge counter campaign in an unprecedented and groundbreaking effort to combat the mass deception to help women and save babies. So we're actually using the resources we raise during this really important Life and Liberty Drive. It's so important, your financial resources. And now this new case on the Massachusetts town about the library and the park. Donate to ACLJ. You can double the impact of your donation right now. ACLJ.org. Those finances matter. ACLJ.org. We need your donation. Last summer, we launched our first ever ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. We never could have imagined how much you, our ACLJ members and ACLJ champions, would exceed our expectations, and we can't thank you enough. We'd love to tell you that 1 year later, threats to life and liberty are no more. Sadly, the radical left is relentlessly doing everything it can to destroy the very foundations of this great nation: life, religious liberty, and the Constitution. The good news is your ACLJ team has not slowed down. We continue to fight in courtrooms across the country, including the Supreme Court, to defend your freedoms and to save innocent babies. And we're proud to announce the return of the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Right now, your tax-deductible gift will be doubled, dollar for dollar, doubling your impact to defend your freedoms and help save innocent lives. Go to ACLJ.org right now and join us in this fight.
keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Seculo. And now your host, Jordan Seculo.
All right, welcome back to Seculo. We are taking your calls to 1-800-684-3110. Rick Grenell is going to be joining us in the next segment of the broadcast. We're going to talk about some of the anti-Semitism that we've seen at Columbia. We're also going to talk about what has happened inside Iran that has been a little problem with their financial systems. But we'll save that for Rick when he joins us in the next segment of the broadcast. Logan, we do want to go to the phones, 1-800-684-3110. I do want to underscore again, people, I think you know about what we're doing on behalf of Tulsi Gabbard, about the FOIAs, and that information has been up at ACLJ.org. We have gotten, I'd say it's kind of unprecedented the way that one's moving forward. That's all I can say right now. But it's moving more quickly than usual. I'll leave it there right now. And during our Life and Liberty Drive, we're about to sue the government and the abortion industries that are smearing pro-life pregnancy centers, like a defamation type case in Massachusetts, where they're saying that you can't go to pro-life pregnancy centers because they're bad, and they are there to deceive you, and they mislead you. So again, you're calling them liars. You can't trust them because you can only get trustworthy care through abortionists. And again, these pro-life pregnancy centers, hello, in the name, you very quickly are going to find out that they are not going to recommend abortion as the step if you are interested in or worried about carrying on.
And that's
pregnancy.
not all they do there. A lot of these provide diapers and baby food
after the fact.
Yes, and clothes. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand, and it's really amazing a lot of the work that they do. And I was in Massachusetts. The reason we started doing this is I was in Massachusetts, and I'm walking down the streets of Boston, and I start seeing these ads everywhere for, and again, using language. And I talk to some people who are even more liberal, who are even more pro-choice. Goes, I don't even like that the state is putting up billboards that I'm having to explain about anti-abortion centers to my kids or whatever it is. So we're going to run a big counter campaign that's going to really expose the truth here and actually help people. I mean, some of the language on their website, the state of Massachusetts, is avoid words like hope. If you see hope in the name of a pregnancy resource center, that could mean they're not going to provide you
you'd have some
hope. How dare they? And we're not going to take it and just stand for it. And look, our friends in Massachusetts, I've seen them all turn up. I see them in the comments. I've seen our friends at our radio affiliate. If you're listening on one of our stations in Massachusetts or in Boston, we're talking with them because there's some amazing work that's going to be done based on the response. And the response has been amazing so far, but we really could use your support. I'm going to encourage you to give during this Life and Liberty Drive in August, because this is the kind of thing that's going to start happening, by the way, around the country. They've said the abortion organization that they're working with, the state of Massachusetts working with, said, hey, this is our day one. This is our state number one. We hope to roll this out across the country. Their goal is to go to places where pro-life pregnancy centers are incredibly necessary.
And they're pushing it to a state website. So what they did was a pro-abortion organization, part of the abortion industry, put up $1 million for the state to utilize to do this. But you're going to a .gov, a Massachusetts.gov. So again, there you've got this inner working, straightforward, right in your face between the abortion industry and a state, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And they're saying this is just where we're starting because, listen, and remember, it was Kamala Harris who we had to fight in California, and we fought back successfully, who wanted to force pro-life pregnancy centers to advertise if they wanted to stay open. The rule was from California, and she was enforcing it as Attorney General, is if you're going to stay open, you have to tell people where they can get the nearest free abortion.
It would be like a vegan restaurant being like, you have to put up a sign that says, we know you're here for a vegan restaurant, but, there's a cheeseburger down the street.
Yeah, exactly. And it's free.
Yeah, free cheeseburger.
Free cheeseburger. So, again,
phone lines are jammed.
You can win, and you've got to fight back, though. So, like that pastor who contacted us about what happened at the library and the park, we're going to make sure that those meetings take place at ACLJ. And we're going to make sure that the abortion industry and the state of Massachusetts can't slander the government. We are also going to launch that huge counter campaign. So not just the lawsuit, but also responding to the ad campaign. And the campaign will be bigger depending on the financial resources we have. Donate today at aclj.org, and your gift will be doubled. That's aclj.org.
Breaking tonight, Columbia University's president has resigned.
The school's president, Manoush Shafiq, stepped down Wednesday, just 1 year into the role.
Shafiq is the third Ivy League president to step down in connection to protests against the war in Gaza.
In her resignation letter, Shafiq cited the turbulent period, saying it had been, quote, a period of turmoil where it has been difficult to overcome divergent views across our community. Columbia University's encampment was the epicenter of pro-Palestinian protests across college campuses last spring. Those demonstrations took a violent turn and resulted in mass arrests after Shafiq twice called in the NYPD to dismantle the tent city, and culminating with hundreds of police officers moving in to clear out protesters that occupied a campus building.
Her resignation comes less than 3 weeks before the first day of classes at Columbia.
Shafiq's actions prompted criticism not just from pro-Palestinian students, but also Jewish students who said they lived in fear on campus.
When they harangue us with chants of "from the river to the sea," Shafiq doesn't want us to believe our own eyes and ears.
Resulting in calls for her to step down, including from lawmakers who visited Columbia during the protests.
I am here today joining my colleagues in calling on President Shafiq to resign.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, in a social media post last night, wrote, Jewish students at Columbia beginning this school year should breathe a sigh of relief.
I've been saying all year that this has never been about President Shafiq or one person. This is about leadership and governance at Columbia, and all I can think about is what happens next. Mm-hmm. Will our next president be willing to, put her foot down and lead strongly in a way that will shut down what you're seeing on your screen right now and make sure that it can be a safe and productive learning environment for everyone?
Hey, welcome back to Secchio. We are joined by Rick Grenell, senior advisor to us at ACLJ. And Rick, I wanted to go to you first because as it's back to school is starting in different parts of the country. Colleges also and universities getting ready to get back started, and people are already thinking, we're going to immediately see this return to massive protest at some of, not just some of the top schools in the country, but just schools all over the country supporting terrorist groups in the Middle East. But we do have something to announce, which is that at Columbia, which was kind of got so much attention there because that Columbia president was the one who went to Congress and really couldn't explain, what anti-Semitism was, and from the river to the sea. The Columbia University president, Manoush Shafiq, Rick, has resigned, as well as that's just days after 3 other deans, people may see this, they had to resign because they were exchanging disparaging text about Jewish life and anti-Semitism. In the text, one dean suggested that a Jewish speaker was just playing up concerns for money. Another sent vomit emojis in reaction to the mention of an opinion piece in the college paper written by one of the school's rabbis. So again, Rick, we are starting to see movement at these levels where deans are resigning, and maybe these activists won't have friends in the highest of places. But again, I still think we're going to see issues like this explode on college campuses, and maybe even at the DNC. We're already starting to hear about that next week. And a lot of it's being fueled by the kind of politicians that the VP nominee for Harris, Waltz, loves, like Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, look, I think this is a real moment where when the veil is pulled back, where we're seeing that our university leaders are very woke and exactly the way that Kamala Harris has told them to be. Remember, there's this video where Kamala Harris is telling people, be woke. You should be as woke as possible. When you have a choice, be very woke. And I think our university presidents and leaders, we've seen them doing this for the last 10 years. And we shouldn't be surprised that our kids, whether it's in public schools or at universities, are being trained to hate America and to hate certain people and to crush dissenting voices. And it's very concerning, especially for university settings. I went to a Christian college and I was challenged to think differently and to listen to people and to listen to other viewpoints and then to bring in my view only after hearing and listening. And we don't have that anymore. And shame on the leadership, adults at these universities who have found themselves to do exactly what Kamala Harris has said, which is be really woke. And I fear that our college campuses are going to go the way of the current Democratic Party even more if Kamala Harris is elected. She's already told us she wants everyone to be this far radical, crazy woke. And that means when you're woke, it means the university presidents and governors decide to put tampons in the boys' restroom. This is insanity. And everybody knows if you're interested in common sense that you have to avoid being woke. And the place that it's celebrated and pushed is on our universities.
You know, Rick, because I want to go back to, this is something that is being pushed out through the media really heavily today. And it started, over the last few days, but really heavily today, that there's just some, complete turmoil in the Trump world. And he's, does he realize he can't win? And on it goes. And, there's some shuffling around on the team. First of all, I mean, Rick, my first response is during the week of after Republican National Convention, the same media was like, you know what? These Republicans are on a path to victory. And, they may say the same thing after the DNC next week, depending on how that goes. But we were also, I think just to be fair, and maybe the media is not being, it's just 20-something days ago where the entire campaign has now got to refocus on a new lead because you focus mostly on the person who's running for president. I mean, I guess should our listeners, because they're starting to express some concern because they're seeing these stories, Rick, should they be concerned?
Look, I just about an hour ago just got off a call with the campaign. There was about roughly, I'm guessing 15 people on the call, and there was an update as to where we are. And I actually came away from the call really encouraged that the fundamentals are there. The media clearly are super excited that they have a candidate in Kamala Harris that can walk up the stairs without falling. And so we've seen a shift in just Democrats, who were always Democrats, always going to vote for the Democrat, suddenly get vocal and get excited. And I put the media in that category as well. They were very sheepish about supporting Biden, but they still were. Remember, they told us he was fine. They told us that he was totally with it and fine and that everything was a cheap fake. Right up until the point where they said, okay, now the numbers are too bad. You got to get out of the way and we got to give it to Kamala. So they've manipulated this so much that, of course, they're going to say that Kamala is amazing. I think, look, the story is that the media is really in danger of utter collapse because they are now literally celebrating somebody and pushing her propaganda points out without even asking her questions. So when she pushes out this, here's my policy on the economy, a real journalist would say, I'm not going to push that out there. I'm not going to write a story that's a one-way story until I have a chance to ask some questions about this of the actual candidate. And that's where journalism has collapsed, where people and I've been highlighting this on my Twitter feed, is just to say, look at these reporters who are recycling and repeating one-way communication without having the ability to ask a single question. That is beginning to catch up to her. I think that the fundamentals are there for Trump. Do we have work to do? Of course we do. Yeah, and they have a candidate now that's different, so we got to adjust.
Yeah, and I think actually maybe it's a wake-up call for activists out there, for folks out there. I had someone at a school pickup line, Rick, literally come up to me while we were waiting for our kids to be let out, and I've got a Trump Vance sticker on my truck, and he just said he just came over to shake my hand, didn't know who I was, and just said, anybody who is willing to do that, I just got to shake their hand. I don't live in a liberal area at all, but I always tell people that, because I tell people on the broadcast show, we get into these campaigns, if your neighbors don't know who you're voting for, you're not but maybe, you go online and you like to say all this tough stuff. You're not doing a lot of service to help that candidate win. Like, people need to know that it's their friends and family and people that they trust and kind of see every day and even if they're not their best friends, but they're good neighbors, know know who they are supporting. And again, that means stepping up. I think people do get a little concerned because it feels like there's violence being threatened, but that's then falling into exactly what the Democrats want. I mean, we're getting into that season of the campaign, Rick. What I mean is that it's the general public will start paying attention when we get to back to school.
Yeah, there's no question. It's getting closer. Every single day I hear, new concerns and people focused on new issues within the campaign. But again, I just had this inside briefing. It was very long. It's very detailed of all of the work. I feel like we're in great shape. The messaging is with us. We got a lot of new voters. We've fixed a lot of the problems from last time. But nothing is going to win this like every single person listening getting out and having their community vote. And so there is this concept. I think I want to talk about it more in the future. But there's this new thing that the Trump campaign is doing called Trump Force Captains. And they've got it down to where you can sign up and be the leader in your block or in several blocks, where you will get data of people who are either Trump supporters or a propensity to vote for Trump. And it's your job to go get them out to the polls and make sure that they have turned in their ballot or voted. And we're going all the way down to grassroots. And thousands of people have signed up to be a Trump Force captain.
I think, Rick, I think this is what we wanted to see. I think this is what a lot of us want to see, this stuff rolling out, is just getting back to those kind of the basics, but using new technology. And Rick, I think we only got like seconds left here, so thank you for joining us and getting to that and sharing that information that you could from that call. I think our listeners probably enjoyed that. But yeah, Logan, like getting back to that like core basic grassroots, that is how really we get beat usually. We win when we go grassroots, and we don't just think we're going to win off name ID or popularity or because our candidate's really famous.
Yeah, I think social media is going to be tougher because it's going to skew younger. So how are you going to get the other people activated? Just go out there. Like I said, that street team mentality. Hey, if you're on hold, we're going to take all the calls we can in the next segment.
Yeah, that's
some of you been on hold for 30 minutes. Just stay up, like just 1 more minute, and we're going to do it. Again, support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org, especially during this campaign right now, as we're going to take on the state of Massachusetts over their attack on pro-life pregnancy resource centers. It's really an important time to get involved because it's going to be coming to your town, even if you're not in Massachusetts. If you are in Massachusetts, by the way, put it in the comment right now. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, I'd love to see where our audience is there. We're noticing a big swell there, which has really been amazing. We'll be right back with your calls.
According to Axios, the Harris campaign has been caught red-handed rewriting news headlines, giving them a pro-Kamala spin, and then posting the phony results within Google search ads.
So when you Google, the fake stuff comes up instead of the actual headlines. However, these search results were purchased by the Harris campaign. So you got to look for the little sticker that says sponsored.
A source familiar with the Harris team is defending the practice, saying that they are simply giving voters, quote, more context.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump had done this with his campaign? Could you imagine if there was even one slight purchase of an ad with a then rewriting of the headline, the uproar that we would be subjected to? And here, you're right. Not only do they know they can get away with it with the media, but they know that they can get away with it with the liberal voters. And that is the saddest part.
These are fake headlines, falsely attributed to news outlets, but it was intentional. So therefore, it's deliberate disinformation. And this is, of course, coming from a candidate and a political party that's demanded censorship of their political opponents.
This is manipulation of the American mind. Most of the headlines already favor her. Time magazine just put her on the cover, and the most important piece of the entire cover story about Kamala Harris, quote, her movement, the redefining Kamala Harris is, quote, the Kamala Harris campaign refused to make her available for an interview. She's not participating in glowing profiles about her. So this was the next stage in that repertoire.
You want to be a trusted brand? All 12 of these outlets should come together in outrage and issue a joint statement saying this is unhealthy for democracy, it's unhealthy for journalism, it's unhealthy for the media. Anything short of that is complicity in Kamala Harris's attempt to deceive America.
I think the dynamic here is, on the one hand, they spread misinformation, disinformation. On the other hand, they demand censorship. And that's what we should keep our eyes out for. They want to have complete control over the information that we receive.
All right, welcome back to Secular. Let me encourage you right now, folks, because, again, this is very important. And if you heard about Massachusetts, you may just think we're talking about the life effort. That is a big one because we're going to be filing a lawsuit, it looks like early next week, against the government of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the abortion industry because they're working hand in hand to run a state campaign, so using also taxpayer dollars, to smear pro-life pregnancy centers. So we'll be filing the lawsuit. We've also want to raise resources for, as Logan has talked about a lot, a huge counter campaign that can make sure people know that this is deception about these centers and what they actually do, and that they're not lying to anybody about trying to be abortion clinics.
Some evil groups of people. These are kind
also
people.
that what they do post-pregnancy, which is providing people in need to make sure if you need assistance. I mean, I don't even know if they ask twice. If you need diapers, if you need baby formula, you can just go. And if you are someone who doesn't want to, go and have an abortion, doesn't think you're at a point in life to raise a child, can they also help assist you with adoption agencies, which, by the way, many times you're paying for with your taxpayer dollars. So do all those things sound bad when there's also the option in Massachusetts to go to the abortion clinic? Like, do they really think they need to advertise more for abortion clinics? They have to run a state campaign? Are the pro-life pregnancy centers that big, that effective?
Yeah.
And I hope they are. But it does show you what they want to launch across the country. Now, to run the counter campaign, that's different than just what we do, legally, which the legal stuff, of course, costs a lot of resources in court because we don't charge our clients a thing. But the counter campaign is something, Logan, that really, we know how to do web ads and things like that. But the size of it will all be based off the resources we've got.
Yeah, that's right. How much we take to outdoor, to billboards, to all of that. How we're going to spend the money. The best place to do it, radio ads, TV ads. All of that is being discussed right now with our team. It's really amazing, the stuff they're coming up with. So I can't wait for it. I'm actually very excited about it. But it can't happen unless you support our work at the ACLJ. We've got a ton of calls.
Yep.
Let's try to get through.
ACLJ.org and make that donation today. Remember, it will be double because it's part of our Life and Liberty Drive. So if you make that $50 donation, that is the equivalent of $100 to the ACLJ. And you know what? If you can write a $500 check, that's going to make it that much easier to run a counter campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and take some phone calls. First up is Michelle, who's an ACLJ champion, so they get first bite, even though she still waited for a long time.
Thank
so we
you,
appreciate
Michelle.
it. You're on the air, Michelle.
Thanks. Okay, so I have kind of a long comment. So I believe that the Democrats' strategy is to create an illusion of popularity for Kamala Harris so that when they cheat, like they did in 2020, it will at least be semi-believable. And I believe they got rid of Biden because it just wouldn't have been believable anymore. And if Harris does debate Trump and bombs, I think they'll replace her, whether it's constitutional or not.
Yeah,
and lastly,
do that one. Again, she would have to drop
just not enough time
out, and Tim. Yeah, I mean that you start getting into a real mess. Now, do I think she could bomb? Yeah, I do. I think that's why she's only signed on for one debate, and probably hoping that if she feels like she bombed, they'll just say that Donald Trump was being a jerk or something like that. And remember, the debates are unknown. Our guy, Trump, if you're on the right, can be unbelievably good in these debate settings. But you can also look back at one debate against Biden where a lot of people stopped watching the debates because of really the way the microphones were working and the cutting off. And
it was a mess.
It was also a time of COVID. People were kind of all over the place. And anyways, I don't think, again, we don't want to say that, this election is going to be stolen, because if you do that, we can't win because people won't vote. And you will notice that there's been a pivot by President Trump. It happened long before the Harris campaign, which is if you need to go vote early, vote early. If you need to vote absentee, vote absentee. If you got to vote by mail, vote by mail. That was not the message, remember,
no.
in the last election cycle. It was you need to vote, must vote day of election. And while it's great that Republicans get a big day of election turnout, where we've gotten killed is that there were already more votes in for Democrats. You can look at some districts and see that you were not going to be able to overcome the amount of votes already in. And
so if people couldn't make it, problems ensued immediately. Let's go ahead and try to continue on quickly. Vincent's calling in Rhode Island. You're on the air, Vincent. Sorry, running out of time. Just go ahead.
Yes, I see an upswing in momentum on the Trump side. Actually, it seems with the press conference and the Twitter, their X presentation with Musk, it seems to be swinging towards him again. And once the debate comes up, after she finishes reading her script, she can't do anything else.
Yeah, I think, again, that debate is going to be very telling. Is Harris able to retool herself? And some of that's impossible, some of it's possible.
Well, clearly his method is to get out there and speak when she won't. So to do interviews, to do all those things, to get as much media coverage as you can while they're actively avoiding it. We saw that clip y'all played yesterday from CNN. They're actively avoiding these debates, actively avoiding interviews.
But next week they own the media.
Yeah. So and then next week it
just
is
like the Republicans
wall
did.
to wall.
Republicans
on
did
all
too.
networks. All right, continuing on, let's try to get to a couple more. Let's go to Susan, who's calling in Maryland on line 5. You're on the air.
Yes, quick question. Do you assess that Kamala shows she has never run a presidential campaign? She's spending egregious amounts of money in markets she's already won.
She's not running the campaign, though. People that ran one of the most effective Democrat campaigns in history, Barack Obama's team, are now running the campaign. So they know how to spend money. They were the best at it that we had seen up to probably Karl Rove. I'm not talking about Karl Rove's politics. I'm talking about his campaign strategy. And then I think Donald Trump was an unbelievable grassroots, unbelievable force. This MAGA, he brought people out to vote who don't even vote. And he got blue-collar voters. He got voters from demographics that we Republicans had given up on, but he wouldn't give up on. But let me tell you something. It's not Kamala Harris saying, we need to spend $900,000 on this. And by the way, $900,000 to them, they could go out and raise that again in seconds. If they need it from the Democrats, and that was important to their fundraising. They have got new people in too, and they are very smart, and they have won presidential elections before. So don't say it's her or it's Tim Walz. They are not the strategist. That's not how campaigns work. Again, he's got people. They've got people on their team, just like President Trump does, who have won presidential elections before.
Yeah, look, we only have a minute and a half left. I'm going to say I'm sorry to our callers. Yeah. Jack,
maybe if we could, if they call back tomorrow.
Let's just try to get them early. Just let them know that we'll call back. Some of you guys been on hold for a half an hour. We really appreciate it. We just ran out of time.
There's a lot to get to.
But we need to talk for the last minute and a half about the important work of the ACLJ and what we're doing, because we are in the middle of our Life and Liberty Drive. We're headed towards the finale of the Life and Liberty Drive for the month of August. And again, it got extended because it's our match. People give $20. It gets doubled because there's another great ACLJ supporter. So we encourage you today, become an ACLJ supporter, become an ACLJ champion. You saw those calls got to be bumped up to the front because those are people who support the ACLJ on a regular, recurring basis, ongoing recurring basis. All you have to do is opt into that, and we would appreciate it. We are rolling out some major campaigns. And yes, it may seem like we are focused on the state of Massachusetts, but that's because we know what's coming next. That was a real issue that we are seeing on the ground, and people feel relieved and elated when we talk to them about the fact that the ACLJ is going to get involved in a state level and take on this egregious attack on pro-life resource centers that really are just providing not just health care to families and giving mothers choice, not choosing abortion. What they are also doing a lot of the times is providing incredible resources, food, formula, diapers, clothes. So many of them do that, medical care. Yeah, they're doing amazing work, and they're being demonized by their own state. And a lot of these are really good, very religious people who are just trying to do what's right. The ACLJ is standing up for them. We have this huge campaign running right now, and we will be launching a big counter campaign, and we are going to court on this as well. So right now, scan that QR code or go to aclj.org. Do it today.